ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। नष्टप्रायेषु भद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवतीरुत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी। ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपकदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामीनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशधारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभो नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे Krishna. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam. By His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. We are reading from Canto 3, Chapter 5, Vidura's Talks with Maitreya. We are at the final section of this chapter, where the elemental demigods, they are offering prayers to the Supreme Personality of Godhead after their creation. So we come to text 50. Tvam nasuraṇāmasi sanvayanam कूटस्थ आद्यः पुरुषः पुराणः त्वं देवशक्त्यां गुणकर्मयोनौ रेतस्त्वजायां कविमाधदेजः. Translation.
You are the original personal founder of all the demigods and the orders of different gradations. Yet you are the oldest and are unchanged. O Lord, you have no source or superior. You have impregnated the external energy with the semen of the total living entities, yet you are unborn. Purport. The Lord, the original person, is the father of all other living entities, beginning from Brahma, the personality from whom all other living entities in different gradations of species are generated. Yet the Supreme Father has no other father. Every one of the living entities of all grades up to Brahma, the original creature of the universe, is begotten by a father, but he, the Lord, has no father. When he descends on the material plane, out of his causeless mercy, he accepts one of his great devotees as his father to keep pace with the rules of the material world. But since he is the Lord, he is always independent in choosing who will become his father. For example, the Lord came out of a pillar in his incarnation as Narsimha Dev. And by the Lord's causeless mercy, Ahilya came out of a stone by the touch of the lotus feet of his incarnation as Lord Shri Ram. He is also the companion of every living entity as the Supersoul, but he is unchanged. The living entity changes his body in the material world, but even when the Lord is in the material world, he is ever unchanged. That is his prerogative. As confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 14.3, the Lord impregnates the external or material energy, and thus the total living entities later come out in different gradations, beginning from Brahma, the first demigod, down to the insignificant ant. All gradations of living entities are manifested by Brahma and the external energy, but the Lord is the original father of everyone. The relationship of every living being with the Supreme Lord is certainly one of son and father, and not one of equality. Sometimes in love, the son is more than the father, but the relationship of father and son is one of the superior and the subordinate. Every living entity, however great he may be, even up to the demigods like Brahma and Indra, is an eternally subordinate servitor of the Supreme Father. The Mahat Tattva principle is the generating source of all the modes of material nature, and the living entities take birth in the material world in bodies supplied by the mother material nature in terms of their previous work. The body is a gift of material nature, but the soul is originally part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. Hare Krishna.
Further, these elemental demigods are praying a beautiful words. They are using Tvam Nasuranam Asisanvayanam. So, O my Lord, you are the original personal founder of all the demigods. Anvayanam, Sanvayanam means of different gradations. Kutastha here is you are the personality who is oldest and you have no source or any superior. So you are the source of all the demigods, you are the oldest, you yourself have no source or supreme, and you are the person, Retastvajayam. You are the person who is original Viryavan, who have impregnated the external energy with the semen of the total living entities. And yet, you personally yourself, you are Ajaha, unborn. And the purport Srila Prabhupada writes that the Supreme Lord is the original person. He is the father of all living entities. Sarva yonishu kaunteya aham bija pradapita. And sometimes people say, okay, you say everything came from God. So from God came from. So people, because they live in the domain of space and time so heavily, where they understand only thing that everything must have a creator, but the creator doesn't have a creator. Right? He exists beyond the realm of time and space, where there is the reality of eternity. And therefore, many times, if you argue with some atheists, they say that, okay, you say everything came from God, but from where your God came from? God did not come from anywhere. God is ever existing reality from whom everything comes, including the time. The element of time also. The source of everything, Sarva Karana Karanam. Therefore, the Lord has no father. But when he descends, he accepts one of the very pure living entity as the father. Prabhupada says very beautifully, just to keep in pace with the material world. Just to keep in pace with the rules of the material world, the Lord accepts Nanda, Yashoda as father, mother, Kausalya, Dasharath as father, mother, so on and so forth. Otherwise, the Supreme Lord can come from anywhere and everywhere. And how he can come from anywhere and everywhere? He can come from anywhere and everywhere, just like there is example of Narasimhadev. He is coming from the pillar. Hiranyakashipu is asking, does this pillar have your God? And Prahlad says, yes, my dear father. Pillar also, there is. And then the Supreme Lord comes, Narasimhadev, from the pillar. Does that mean pillar becomes father of the Lord? No, the Lord is Sarvavyapi everywhere and he can appear from anywhere. But just to keep in pace with the rules of the material world, the Lord accepts very pure living entities as father and mother. Not only, and he is so powerful, he can convert stone into Ahilya, right? With the touch of his lotus feet. Ahilya was cursed to become a stone, and then she was completely delivered. And similarly, the Supreme Lord accompanies all living entities as Paramatma. So he may come himself from stone, as from the pillar. He may make a living entity appear from the stone. He will enter the heart of all the living entities, but the Supreme Lord personally remains unchanged. Because he is spiritual, he is the source, he remains unchanged. So that is Prabhupada says, that is the very special prerogative of the Supreme Lord. Bhagavad Gita confirms that all living entities, they are actually the Bija Pradapita is the Supreme Lord. So the relationship between the Lord and the living entity is of the Father and the Son. And therefore, the relationship between the living entities is the brotherhood. And that universal brotherhood, Prabhupada writes very beautifully, SSR. Universal brotherhood is possible only one accepts the universal fatherhood of the Supreme Lord. Sometimes between brother and the father and son, sometimes the son may defeat the father, but that is the pastime of the father to facilitate pleasure of the son, right? But the eternal relationship is of the living entity and the Supreme Lord, is of superior and subordinate, is of Vibhu and Anu, is of independent enjoyer and the dependent enjoyer. And therefore, there is no question of living entity at any stage of existence becoming one with the Supreme Lord. Here, Mahatattva is the generating source of all the modes of material nature, and the living entities are impregnated. That is, the semen of the Lord is the living entity, right? Semen of the Lord is living entity. Semen of Lord Shiva is called as gold. That we will come later when we will come to the pastime of Mohini Murti, 8th canto. There we will see. So, sa aikshatah, simply by the glance, Lord transfers the living entity from the spiritual realm to the material realm, and thus the living entities take birth within this Mahat Tattva. So, no doubt the body is the gift of the material nature, but the soul proper is originally part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, very beautiful prayers. We come to text 51. This is the last shloka. It is a big purport. We'll study in the sections. ततो वयं मत्प्रमुखा यदर्थे विभु बभूविमात्मन् करवां किं ते त्वं न स्वचक्षु परिदेहि शक्त्या देवक्रियार्थे यदनुग्रहाणाम्. Translation.
O Supreme Self, please give us, who are created in the beginning from the Mahat Tattva, the total cosmic energy, your kind directions on how we shall act. Kindly award us your perfect knowledge and potency so that we can render you service in the different departments of subsequent creation. Purport. The Lord creates this material world and impregnates the material energy with the living entities who will act in the material world. All these actions have a divine plan behind them. The plan is to give the conditioned souls who so desire it a chance to enjoy sense gratification. But there is another plan behind the creation, to help the living entities realize that they are created for the transcendental sense gratification of the Lord and not for their individual sense gratification. This is the constitutional position of the living entities. The Lord is one without a second, and he expands himself into many of his transcendental pleasures. All the expansions, the Vishnu Tattvas, the Jiva Tattvas, the Shakti Tattvas, the personality of Godhead, the living entities, and the different potencies, are different offshoots from the same one Supreme Lord. The Jiva Tattvas are separated expansions of the Vishnu Tattvas. Although the Jivas have different potencies, they are all meant for the transcendental sense gratification of the Supreme Lord. Some of the Jivas, however, wanted to lord it over material nature in imitation of the lordship of the personality of Godhead. Regarding when and why such propensities overcame the pure living entities, it can only be explained that the Jiva Tattvas have infinitesimal independence, and that due to misuse of this independence, some of the living entities have become implicated in the conditions of cosmic creation and are therefore called Nityabaddhas or eternal conditioned souls.
Yeah,
The
so it's a big
expansions of
purport. We'll study in sections. Further, now these demigods are praying. Tato vayam mat pramukhaya darthe. O Supreme Lord, please give us your kind directions how to act. So first they are saying, and who are we? We are the created beings from the Mahat Tattva, your total cosmic energy. And therefore, please give us your kind directions. also award us the perfect knowledge and potency so that we can render service unto you in the different departments of subsequent creation. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada writes that the Lord creates the material world and impregnates the material world to facilitate the living entities. What is the plan of the Lord? The plan of the Lord is to facilitate the independent desires of the living entities who want to enjoy separate from the Supreme Lord. Chaitanya Charitamrita explains very beautifully. Atmendriya pritivancha dhare kamanam, Krishnendriya pritivancha dhare premanam. That the living entities, they have senses. Even in the spiritual world, they have indriya. But when the living entity desires the sense gratification for his own self, that is called as kama. And that is facilitated in the material world. And the plan of the Lord is to give the perfect arrangement to living entities so they can try to fulfill their desires. But these desires will never be fulfilled because that is simply not the constitutional nature of the living entity. What is the nature of the living entity? Jivere Swarupa hai Krishna Nityadas. And Srila Prabhupada's example of fish and water, fish and the ocean. And although the ocean may provide infinite facility to the fish to enjoy outside the ocean, ocean may give iPhone to the fish, ocean may give the best of the 5G connection to the fish, ocean may open, or make all the facilities for the fish to enjoy on social media, arrange all the bills of the hotels, 5-star hotel, eating, sleeping, everything the ocean may arrange for the fish. That is the kindness of the ocean towards the fish. That is the love of the ocean to the fish. But in spite of all these arrangements, the fish will be always incomplete. Why? Because although the fish is trying to control, he is outside his constitutional nature. And the constitutional nature of the fish is to be part of the water, to be part of the ocean, right? To serve the ocean, enjoy the ocean while being within the ocean. Similarly, the living entity who has come to the material world, Prabhupada says, in a Vishamasthiti, in a foreign land, and the Supreme Lord, being very, very kind Father, gives all the arrangements. In fact, all these arrangements, what we are going to see, they are the arrangements to facilitate revelation of a living entity. Just imagine. If somebody is a Tracian, somebody gets this charge of Deshadroha or somebody like that, traitor, he will be simply executed. But the Lord is so kind, even the rebellious living entity, he creates entire material creation. And what we are going to see that Sarga Visarga, entire secondary creation, personally comes time to time, sends his messengers, followers. Why? Because the Lord loves the living entity. But in spite of all these arrangements, the living entity cannot be happy constitutionally in the material world. Right? And therefore, Prabhupada says, the Supreme Lord has many, many offshoots. There are different energies, Jiva Tattva, Vishnu Tattva, Shakti Tattva, Shiva Tattva, all emanate from the Supreme Lord, and there are different, the emanations. Swamsha, they are the Vishnu Tattvas, Vibhinnamsha are the Jiva Tattvas. And now somebody may wonder that when and why did Jiva Tattva get in touch with the material world? Prabhupada says, regarding when and why, such propensities overcame a pure living entity. What is the propensity? Propensity to lord it over material nature, propensity to enjoy separately from the Supreme Lord. Because sometimes people have this question, that Prabhuji, spiritual world is so spiritual, so pure, that how did even a material thought come in the spiritual world? Right? How this thought of envy, we say that Ichcha, Dvesha, Samuthena, Swar, So, Prabhupada says, for when and why, because the Jiva Tattva has infinitesimal independence, very minute independence. Because the Lord is fully independent, He is Vibhu. The quality of independence is there in the Lord. Similarly, being part and parcel of the Supreme, we also get that quality of independence. But because the Lord is Vibhu, Jiva is Anu, the independence of the living entity is also very, very minute. And that by the misuse of such independence, misuse not always means material and spiritual, by not even optimal use of this minute independence, very few fragmental living entities may become implicated in the conditions of the material world. And thus they become Nitya Siddha. Nityasiddha means eternally conditions. Eternally conditioned means their conditioning is not to be traced back. For a long time, they are conditioned. And this is how Srila Prabhupada explains this paragraph. Yeah, please continue.
The expansions of Vedic wisdom also give the Nityabaddhas, the conditioned living entities, a chance to improve, and those who take advantage of such transcendental knowledge gradually regain their lost consciousness of rendering transcendental loving service to the Lord. The demigods are amongst the conditioned souls who have developed this pure consciousness of service to the Lord, but who at the same time continue to desire to lord it over material nature energy. Such mixed consciousness puts a conditioned soul in the position of managing the affairs of this creation. The demigods are entrusted leaders of the conditioned souls, as some of the old prisoners in government jails are entrusted with some responsible work of prison management. So the demigods are improved conditioned souls acting as representative of the Lord in the material creation. Such demigods are devotees of the Lord in the material world, and when completely free from all material desire to lord it over material energy, they become pure devotees and have no desire but to serve the Lord. Therefore, any living entity who desires a position in the material world may desire so in the service of the Lord and may seek power and intelligence from the Lord, as exemplified by the demigods in this particular verse. One cannot do anything unless he is enlightened and empowered by the Lord. The Lord says in Bhagavad Gita 15.15, Matta smriti jnanam apohanam cha. All recollections, knowledge, etc., as well as all forgetfulness are engineered by the Lord, who is sitting within the heart of everyone. The intelligent man seeks the help of the Lord, and the Lord helps the sincere devotees engaged in his multifarious services.
Yes. Further, Srila Prabhupada explains the expansion of the Vedic wisdom gives the chance to improve the living entities. And those who take the advantage of this, they are called as demigods. So demigods are also conditioned souls who are praying currently, but they have, after being sufficiently conditioned and sufficiently purified, they have come to conclusion Vasudeva Sarvamiti. And therefore, they are in the process of developing the pure consciousness. And at the same time, they also have some desire to lord it over material nature. And Srila Prabhupada says here, such mixed consciousness will lead one to the position of demigod. Right. So here is a beautiful example Prabhupada gives. Just like in the prison house, there are some kaidis are there, some prisoners are there. And there for a long time they are in the prison house. They have realized they had made a mistake. They have realized that they are getting purified now. But still they are not fully pure. But they will be given a charge that you become aap ye subah ka khana bato, you distribute the dress to all the other kaidis, you distribute you know you distribute some vacations or paroles to other prisoners. So some they may become part of, although they themselves are prisoners, but because they are getting purified of their offense, they are completing their tenure within the prison house, they are getting purified, they are given some management responsibilities. So this is the case with the demigods. So demigods are also living entities like you and me. By the position of pious activities, they are promoted to the higher plane, but still they also have a tendency to enjoy the material world, lord it over the material world, but they are much purified than the normal living entities. And due to this mixed consciousness, Prabhupada says, they are assisting the Lord in the universal affairs. There are certain demigods who are the pure devotee demigods, like Yamaraj, Lord Shiva, Durga Devi, Ganapati, Surya Dev. These are the pure devotees of the Lord, where the Lord says that through them he passes on the different parampara, different messages, and the different instructions of the Supreme Lord. But other devata, they are in the mixed consciousness that they are devotees of the Lord also, and they want to enjoy the material world also. And this is how. And now these demigods are praying for the empowerment of the Supreme Lord. So Srila Prabhupada said there, one cannot do anything substantial unless he is enlightened and empowered by the Lord. Sarvasya chaham hridhi sannivishto mattah smritir jnanam apohanam cha. That the Supreme Lord is sitting in everybody's heart, and from him comes knowledge, remembrance, forgetfulness, and the ability to perform any activity also comes from the Supreme Lord. And therefore, intelligent person will always pray to the Supreme Lord before undertaking any activity. This is the sign of intelligence, to offer prayers to the Supreme Lord. The best thing is to find what is in the mind of the Supreme Lord, what is the mission of the Lord, and perform the activities in sync with the mission of the Lord. And then one can very quickly attain great success and by performing multifarious services. Yeah, please continue.
The demigods are entrusted by the Lord to create different species of living entities according to their past deeds. They are herein asking the favor of the Lord for the intelligence and power to carry out their task. Similarly, any conditioned soul may also engage in the service of the Lord under the guidance of an expert spiritual master and thus gradually become freed from the entanglement of material existence. The spiritual master is the manifested representative of the Lord, and anyone who puts himself under the guidance of the spiritual master and acts accordingly is said to be acting in terms of Buddhi Yoga. As explained in Bhagavad Gita 2.41, Vyavasayatmika buddhir ekeha kurunandana bahusha hi adantascha buddhayo vyavasaya nam. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the third canto, fifth chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Vidura's Talks with Maitreya.
So these demigods are entrusted by the Lord to create different species of living entities. Look at the, what they are supposed to create, such an important thing, that these all these 84 lakh forms that we are seeing. So these demigods are entrusted to create these forms, and they are asking that, my dear Lord, we are your creation. Please empower us with your knowledge, with your potency, and with your desire. What is your mission? So that we can act accordingly in your activities. And they are here in asking for the favor of the Lord, direction of the Lord, and power to carry out the task. Right? And Prabhupada says, therefore, a wise living entity should always act under the guidance of the bona fide spiritual master. Right? One should not, action is not some reckless action. Aikantiki harer bhakti utpatayaiva kalpate. The action has to be in the parampara, sanctioned by the bona fide spiritual master. Of course, the spiritual master or the representative of the guru, they will always give enough scope for creativity, but the guidance should come from them, what we are supposed to do. Because the spiritual master is the manifestation of the Paramatma outside, he is the manifestation of Chaitya Guru, and he will award Buddhi Yogam. And Srila Prabhupada quotes this, Vyavasayatmika buddhir ekeha kurunandana bahushakhahi anantascha buddhayo avyavasayinam. So what this verse means is, one has to put in one's endeavor in the direction of the mission of the Supreme Lord. And how to know the mission of the Supreme Lord? One can know mission of the Supreme Lord by knowing the desire of the bona fide spiritual master. Right? And then one's endeavors will be very, very successful and fruitful. And what is that success? That success is pleasure of the Supreme Lord. Right? That is the definition of the success. So this is how we conclude Canto 3 and Chapter 5, Vidura's talks with Maitreya. So we will conclude here and continue tomorrow. Srila Prabhupada ki jai,
Jai.
Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Thank you, Prabhupada. Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone. Hare
Prabhupada.
Krishna.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhupada. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Jai.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhupada. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhupada. Thank you, Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhupada. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhupada. Thank you, Prabhupada.
Prabhupada, thank you, Prabhuji. Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna. किती छान सांग
రెండు రబ్బర్ బ్యాండ్లు కావాలిగా కింద పెట్టడానికి అమ్మాయి రెండు రబ్బర్ బ్యాండ్లు ఇక రెండు రబ్బర్ బ్యాండ్
పెద్ద జడేస్తాను ఎలా తెచ్చుకోను
తీసుకో